Well, hopefully you did have a chance to read the parable of the sower. It's been a couple weeks because last week we had the singing and didn't get to it. And I was all prepared to present this, and so then I had an extra week to study on it. But the parable of the sower, Matthew 13, and also it's found in Luke 8 and Mark 4. Some of this will kind of take the combination of all of them, but the one we're going to be reading from is from Matthew 13. The last couple of Wednesdays that we were studying, we kind of went over what parables were, why they were spoken, all those things, and now we're going to start in with that first one that Jesus told. Let's start in verse 1. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seeds fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. And we talked about that, why he was speaking in parables. There were some people that were just so closed-hearted, they weren't going to hear no matter what. Now the disciples came to him and asked, why do you speak in parables? Why do you speak to the people in parables? And he replied, he explains, the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because you see, and your ears because they hear. For I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous men long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. He's going to explain it now to the disciples. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. The one who received the seed that fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life, and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. But the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He explains it pretty clearly, doesn't he? What is the seed?
Gospel.
The gospel, the word, the truth. A farmer is not going to go and plant bad seed. A good farmer is not going to, he's going to know what he's sowing. He's not going to plant thistle seed out there when he wants alfalfa to grow. But how many people today are planting the wrong seed in this world? They're planting the wrong seed. They have this same Bible that I have, and they read this, and oh yeah, we're gonna plant that seed out there. We're gonna bring a lot of people in, and they plant belief. And that's it. You don't have to do anything else. Ask Him into your heart. Believe on Him and you will be saved. It's unfortunate that a lot of people believe that they think that is the gospel, the good news. But it's not. It's not. And I often think when he talks about the people in here that hardened their heart to his words, that's why he had to speak in parables. They hardened their heart to it. And I think of how many people have hardened their heart to the true gospel. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of people out there that are very religious. They attend churches. They think they're okay. But they have hardened their heart to the true gospel because they think they already have what they need. And I think it's so sad because there is a lot of people out there that do not have the truth. They think they do, but they've got a bad seed. And it's unfortunate because they are really hard to reach. Because they have closed their heart to anything else. And that's what I really struggle with. And it's been brought to home a lot more just lately. Because I tried numerous times to show my dad the truth. To see it in the Bible. The same one that he read every day. He read his Bible every day. And yet he could not see the truth. And I think of how many out there are the same way. As it says, the sower sows his seed, which is the gospel, and he sows it on 4 different kinds of ground. Now, a little history here. When they didn't plant quite like we do right now, because we've got all this sophisticated planting equipment and everything that, they tills and discs and planters and all of this. But back then it was pretty simple. They basically kind of roughed the ground up a little bit, and then they went out and they sowed it. They scattered the seed. And they would scatter enough of it so that they would have a good crop. But in doing so, it went over everything. I mean, they didn't kind of have just a little spot that they wanted to sow. They sowed it on everything. And as it says, there's four different soils. The pathway, the hard soil. How many of us would take seed and sow it on our driveway and expect a crop? Would it grow? It's not going to grow. It's not going to do anything. We wouldn't do that. But if we're sowing a field and some happens to go over onto the road that gets to the field, it's going to be there, isn't it? But it tells us what happens to that seed. It's like the gospel falling on deaf ears. It's not going to do anything. Some fell by the wayside and was trampled down, and the birds devoured. Some fell on the stony soils, places where it didn't have much earth. It was shallow ground. It immediately springs up, but then it withers. How many of us have sown seed like that? We sow it and it comes up immediately and we think, wow, we are going to have a bumper crop. And then it just withers away. We think, well, what's wrong? I'm watering it. I'm doing everything I can, but it just withers away. It doesn't have any root. That reminds me of the people that are really excited for the Lord. They become baptized. They receive the word. They're on fire. And then what happens? Burn out. A little bit of adversity comes, a little bit of heat. And then what? They just wither. They don't have any stamina. They don't have anything to back them up. They don't have anything to call upon. There's no root. We have those today within the church. Some fell among the thorns. This is a soil that's not fully cultivated. I know Dina would not plant her garden without pulling all the weeds first. When you plant a garden, you rototill it, you have nothing but just beautiful soil. And you plant in that. But what happens if you don't continue to weed it? If you don't pull those up?
It gets crowded out.
It gets crowded out. It's natural for the weeds to come on. Just like the cares of the world. Just like the problems of life. Don't go away because we become a Christian. We continue to have flat tires. We continue to have problems with the neighbor's dog coming over in our yard and doing what he shouldn't be doing. We still have those problems. It's not like once we become a Christian, it's all rainbows and everything. It's not that way. And there's always, as it says, what was it? I think it said, deceitfulness of wealth. The worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. How important is money to us as Christians? I mean, when you really think about it, how important is it? We have to live. We have to have money. But here lately, I have talked to a lot of people that said, you know what? You can't take it with you.
It's real important when it pertains to what I want.
Oh, yeah, what you want. Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Within that idea of the deceitfulness of wealth doesn't have to be just money either.
Oh, no.
The deceit is self-sufficiency. You know, I can do it all. I've got all I need. I've got all, maybe even have all I want. You know, just, I don't need anybody.
Right.
Don't need anybody.
It's not relying on God for your... He tells us He's going to supply everything we need. How many of us really, truly trust Him for that? I mean, totally. He's going to supply it. And I'm not going to have to worry. He tells us not to worry about it. I'm not going to have to worry. He's going to supply. How many of us have truly been there? I know Jill has. She's told me many times that she has been to points where the day the rent's due and I have no money. Or I've got to fix a meal for the kids and there is no food in the fridge. And miraculously, someone drops a bag of groceries off on the porch. Or someone shows up with an envelope and says, this is for you. And it's for the exact amount of what she needed. Not what she wanted, but what she needed. Have we been there? Because the more we're there, the more we trust God will do that for us. But if we haven't really been there, do we really trust that God is going to supply that for us? He tells us, but how easy is it to fully trust Him like that?
Even if we do let Him do it, we kind of want to, we'll let Him take the driver's seat, but we'll kind of backseat drive the whole time and be, well, if you make this turn up here, I'd really like that. And if it's not too much trouble, can we make a detour over here and do something that I want to do? We'll let Him, air quote, take the driver's seat. But it's really easy to say, well, I have faith and I'll do all these things, but I just got to miss work. I got to miss church today because God's provided me with this job, so I need to be at this job He's provided me with. So church is going to take a back seat, and we confuse what He's going to provide us with our own obsessions, where we we can obsess even for good things to a point that we put God in kind of a co-pilot rather than a.
I was going to say, a lot of people say, God is my co-pilot. Well, what is that? What is that saying? I mean, that's saying that I'm in control and God is just there to pick up the pieces. That ain't the way it is. He has to be in full control, and we're along for the ride. Now, I'll guarantee you, the ride is not going to be a fun one. It's going to be one that is going to take you to the highest mountain and to the lowest valley. Joe.
What was that quote in our devotional about Satan? Just because
Satan is leaving you alone is not evidence
of you being blessed.
of you being blessed.
I think it's scarier.
And think about that.
He's leaving me alone, why?
Why is Satan leaving you alone? Because he knows he's already got you. Satan is not going to try his best to turn you around if you're already following him. If you're following God, that's when the one he's going to try to get you to look somewhere else. Divert your gaze. Take your eyes off Jesus, and he's already got you. But yet, how easy is it to just let our eyes divert? That's what it's talking about. This seed that fell on this ground of all this stuff that's going on. The weeds, they're coming up. You can get choked out. I think too many times we let some things in the world kind of get to the best of us. I know I do. I can get caught up in a lot of things that go on in the world that isn't the best thing for me. It's not like I'm jumping off in the deep end, but I'm wading out there a little farther than I need to be. And when we get out there so far, the water don't feel too bad now. Kind of like the frog, you put him in cold water and turn the burner on, he's fine. He's good. And pretty soon he's boiled to death. You throw him in a pan of hot water, he jumps out immediately. He knows, oh no, this is hot. But it's just like the weeds. The weeds aren't just boom, right there. They grow slowly. Their roots spread. And next thing you know, they start choking out. And that's exactly how the world is going to work with us. We let a little bit in, and then it takes hold. A little bit more comes along. Well, that's not so bad. And pretty soon, it's all around us. Then it's super hard to get out of it. Some fell on the good ground and grew as intended. It produced a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. One of the things that's pretty interesting to me, when it talks about the sower going out and sowing, he did not distinguish specific ground, did he? He spread it everywhere.
Kind of a horrible sower.
Yeah.
If you were paying him to sow your seed that you bought.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to see the land that's prepared. And that's correct, that they're not out there with the machinery, they're sowing it by hand.
Right.
But it doesn't say that he picked the soil. It just said he sowed.
He just sowed. He threw the seed out there. Okay, what is that depicting for us? Do we just pick and choose the people that we sow the gospel to?
We shouldn't.
We shouldn't, should we? I mean, like you say, he's a horrible sower. I wouldn't want him to sow my seed, but God tells us what we're supposed to do. Go into just this portion of the world and sow my seed. Is that what he said? He said go into where? All. All means all the grounds. Now, as it says, some are not going to receive it.
Maybe sometimes we can weed, and maybe sometimes we can dig the rocks out and help them along.
Yep. But the main...
A lot of times you sow a seed, and you're thinking, it's not going to go, you know, and you keep on working with them, and I believe that's a real important thing, that sometimes we've got to weed, and sometimes we've got to dig the rocks.
Right.
With our,
But we are supposed to sow the seed everywhere. Everywhere. It's not for us to pick and choose who needs to have the gospel and who doesn't. So we need to sow it. And like I say, there's going to be some that's going to say, no, I've got my own religion, whatever it might be. Or, I'm a believer, I'm good. I'm good. But we're supposed to sow that seed. On all of it. As we know, there's a lot of people that we talk to that they just turn their head and say, no, I'm not listening. I'm not gonna accept anything that you have to say. I've got my own thoughts. I'm gonna worship God my own way, or I've got some other idol that I'm going to worship. I'm not going to do it. But then there's others, just like we've said, the stony ground, the thorny ground, they accept that word. They accept it readily. It gives us kind of a thrill, doesn't it? When we see that seed planted and we see it sprouting. And we think, yes, they're getting it. They're getting it. And they do. But what happens? Now remember, it says, go into all the world, teaching them, baptizing them, and teaching them everything that we know. How many times do we just get them to that point of baptism, and then, okay, you're a part of the church, make sure you attend every Sunday and Wednesday, and you'll be good. Did we teach them anything? That's what happens when they fall on the stony ground.
Well, and I was going to say, and that's why we have each other, and that's why we do meet, but there is, for lack of a better term, responsibility of if you have worked with somebody and they do accept the gospel, to kind of to continue being the gardener, the farmer that is there helping them, because we all know that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're like sunshine and daisies.
Exactly. There's going to be problems. Falling on the stony ground, like Dina said, how many rocks do we pick out of the garden and the field and everything? I mean, it's commonplace here in Lemhi County. There's lots of rocks, and every year a new crop comes on, and we got to pick them. They just keep coming on. What do? Roger can attest to how many rocks he's put in those cages. He's put thousands of pounds of rocks in those cages, and he still has more rocks. They just keep growing, don't they? They just keep coming.
It's the Rocky Mountains.
Do we ever think that possibly we need to clean the ground a little bit to help some of these people? That they're on fire, but then you can see them withering away. You can see that they're not getting the nourishment that they need.
I had one of the ladies at the church, had 3 kids, and laundry's like never ending. If you turn away, it like reproduces and
Oh yeah.
keeps growing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she said that's what being a Christian is like, is you have to continually be in the cycle of washing your soul and keeping, she said, it's just like laundry.
Yep.
You're never done. You just keep doing that cycle of
Yep.
picking yourself up, cleaning up your life, and getting rid of those things that you need to step away from. But you're never done. It's
Right.
just like laundry.
We go through life and we sin, don't we? We still sin. How do we get that washed away? By staying continually in Christ. By continually walking, as it says in 1 John. Going with Him, so that that blood purifies us. But it's like the laundry thing. We get dirty, and we just figure that, hey, you know, I'm okay. But we need to continually be cleansing ourselves. And the only way we can do that is be in the Word, be in fellowship with one another, uplifting and strengthening, rebuking. Sometimes we don't like that word, but it's there. It's what we need to do in order for some of these to grow, to get out of this rocky ground. We need to pick some of the rocks to make it good soil. Roger, and then Jill.
So the ones that tend to fall away is they don't count the cost. You know, they got these friends that are worldly and they have an influence over them, and pretty soon the church plays second fiddle, and they're back in the world.
Exactly.
They just can't grasp the church concept and separate themselves from the worldliness.
Right. And it's what Satan wants. Satan wants us to have those worldly desires. He wants us to have those. Because then he's got a hook in us. He can just pull us back a little bit. Joe.
Well, you know, Satan's the prince of this world. You know, and he is speaking loud and every day. And it is persistent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm thinking, am I doing that in the godly way? You know, am I speaking with zeal and with compassion, with love, am I doing that daily? Or is it just when I have time?
Yeah.
Because I can see this in my grandson and his friends. The world is so strongly talking to them.
Oh, yeah.
That they really sincerely and passionately believe what it's saying. And that's really hard to know how to communicate that, because, well, that was in your time, this is this time. These things are different. Yes, I agree that it's different, but yes, it's like to the point where they're so passionate about what they're hearing that they don't see anything else.
Well, they get caught up in the things that are going on about them. The younger generation is for stimulus. Whatever's stimulating them, about them, that's what they're wanting. And if it makes them feel good, they want more of it.
Well, it's not even that, Jeff. After conversations I've had here lately, it's just they really feel like these thoughts and things that are presented to them are real. They really sincerely believe they're real. I mean, the abortion issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many different things that they're constantly bombarded with every single day.
Right.
That they're being told that this is right. This is right.
Mm-hmm.
This is right.
But that's man's idea of what is right. And that's where we have to, once again, it goes back to the seed. What are we sowing? We could be into all the politics and all the laws and everything, and we could be sowing that seed, and we would be catering to the younger generation, just like you're saying.
I mean, it's like, I'm really praying about how we counteract that.
Right.
How we that firm, strong belief in what's being told to them. They're sincere in a wrong way, but they are.
Yeah. If you could just get that sincerity pointed in the right direction.
It's like, I was thinking, whoa, and I was thinking, and what I portray to them is that my standard is so too hard. The standard is too hard. We can't live up to that. And I'm like, well,
It can be done. God did it with Paul. You think about Paul, the things that he was bombarded with his whole life, the Jewish philosophies and what was right and what was wrong. And, you know, even just because God met him on the road to Damascus didn't make his changes any less difficult. I mean, he had to abandon everything he knew and completely change his life around. We can do that with the younger generation. It's hard, and their journey is going to be the hardest part of it.
Yep.
But it can be done because the gospel is just as effective now as it was 2,000 years ago.
Right.
God designed it that way by on purpose.
Right.
Because
I just didn't
good
realize
minds
how
souls.
ingrained,
Yeah.
they are.
Oh, yeah.
How
Satan.
ingrained it is, and I'm like, kind of like you're saying, the weed that starts slowly kind of creeping up, you know, and I'm like, oh, my heart just went, that's only 2 people that I talked to and saw what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow, there's millions.
Yeah, there is. Josh.
The interesting thing here is it is imperative that we use a good seed. The unadulterated, pure seed will grow the pure truth.
Yep.
And he uses 3 words here, quoting from the Old Testament, and hearing, understanding, seeing, and perceiving, and a heart that's become dull. We need to think about how are they hearing the gospel message?
Right.
How are they seeing the gospel message? And how is their heart engaged
Right.
in the message? Because right now, especially youth, and I would say 40 and below, typically are emoting through decisions. They're not logically making decisions on things. Because
Right.
we're standing here and we logic and we reason and we make decisions based on what evidences are before us. But you have people who are trying to teach. They're not learning that way. They're not perceiving the world that way. They're seeing a thing. They grasp one heartbreaking story of 0.1%, in the case of abortion, the rape case, right?
Exactly.
That's less than, so it's infinitesimal, like how little that is, but they take that, their heart latches onto that, and that becomes
Right.
It's for everything, the truth for everything. So that's how they reason through things.
Right.
But if we can understand that that's how they're reasoning,
Yes.
we can reach them. It's not a lost cause.
Right.
It's just a matter of how are we sowing a seed.
Right.
There was a manner in which they sowed the seed, and there was a manner that Jesus used to explain things. The mechanics of how we're doing it may need to change in that
Right.
we can't just Jewel Miller film strip this, right?
Exactly.
There are things that we've got to do
Yeah.
to be able to get the message to the people. And those are the people that we have in our influence, in our circle around us. I can't reach the same people you can.
Right.
And neither, and vice versa. So we really need to be thinking about ourselves as a sower. What am I actively doing as a sower on a daily basis?
Right.
How are people hearing and seeing, and how am I engaging in people's hearts in this message?
Because we look around in this room, what's the age? We're getting older. And yeah, Cole, you look at me strangely. That you're getting older too, Cole. Okay. But we have 2 kids in the back. 2 kids. Is that our future? 3. I didn't see Luxton, but we have 3, and that's the future of this church right now. 3. Like Josh says, how are we sowing to get the younger people to understand the importance of this good seed that we have? How do we get them to understand? How do we portray it? How do we sow it in a proper way that it doesn't fall on the stony ground? It doesn't fall on the pathway that they've, I don't understand a word you're saying, I don't want to mess with you. That we can have that field cultivated to the point where when it falls on there and it sprouts and it grows and the roots go deep. That's what it needs to be. And we need to help it grow. We need to water it. God is going to give the increase. But we need to sow it, we need to cultivate it, we need to water it, we need to care for it, we need to teach them whatever we can. Everything that we know. Because that's why we're here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We'd be off doing something else, fishing at the river or having a barbecue or something else. It wouldn't matter to us to be here on Wednesday night to get our souls rekindled and rebuilt by the fellowship with one another. It wouldn't matter. But it does matter enough, and if it matters enough to do this, it matters enough to try our very best to get those younger people here. Teach them. Yes, Hubie and then Jill.
It's like seeds stored in a silo or barn. Once they're stored there.
They're not going to do anything, are they? Not going to do anything. It's not going to grow a crop when it's all stored.
If you keep it in the church, you're not going to do anything except for the people that are here.
Exactly. I can sow seed all day long in here and it makes me feel good. But what's it doing? What's it doing? That same seed needs to be sowed out there in the world, as it says. He sowed it everywhere. That's what we need to do. Sow it everywhere. I am totally out of time. I cut you short a little bit, so just go ahead and take all the time you need, Cole.
We'll pull an Acts 20.
We'll continue on this next week. I didn't get all of my thoughts out on this, but we'll continue next week and we'll see how far we get then.